Hey, my name is Augusta C. Foster, host of the Mantalk Monday podcast, and that's what this is. Today's episode, the doctor will see you, a discussion on Cheyenne Bryant, the flaws of influencer culture, and really the issue we have with credibility in important Black spaces. Let's get into it. For those of you, it's your first time watching or listening. Specifically, if you're listening, you didn't see the finger quotes, but you'll see them in the title. My name is Augusta C. Foster. I'm an author, a man, pretty hard to describe. Let's run that back. I'm an imperfect believer. I'm a father, quite literally somebody daddy times five. I've been a stepfather, an adoptive father. I've authored a book called The Divorced Dad Reset, which is also coming in a remixed version. My current work is in, it's a lot of work on imperfections. It's a lot of work on the thoughts of men. Its title is still working, but it's currently named Invisible Expectations. So I say all of that to bring you here to give you some of my credentials as somebody who successfully mentors and coaches people in a space of surviving divorce, overcoming depression, realizing our imperfections, and how there's only been one perfect person to walk this earth. He also died on a cross and rose on the third day. But hey, we all can't be him. We could just strive for our best. Those are my credentials. I always like leading with, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a clinician. I am not a professional of sorts. What I am is a mental health advocate. What I am is a peer support specialist. What I am is someone who is regularly in spaces and platforms and conferences with clinicians and people who are certified in that field. I go home to one every day. Totally. Got a whole, got a whole fiance. That's an entire licensed counselor, therapist, and clinician. Got a couple relatives who are doctors, like with psychology degrees, like practicing, not like just throwing the doctor on there or quote unquote honorary doctors, like real, hey, I'm a doctor of psychology. Hey, I'm a medical doctor. Hey, I'm a doctor of dental. So when we come around to this topic, which in my favorite words of every Kojic pastor, I won't be before you long, it's an interesting topic because I said it's threefold what I'll be covering today in this short amount of time. And linked in the bottom of this, you'll be able to find my brand new Substack. And in the Substack, which is a blog or newsletter, if you will, and it'll kind of give a more expansive portion of this conversation. This will be extremely concise and condensed. But if you've been under a rock, there's this lady named Dr. Cheyenne Bryant who, full disclosure, spent most of her life in a city called San Pedro, California. Now, if you know me, if you know my family, if you know my friend circle, if you know a couple of sergeants at the Harbor Division, if you know anybody who's a longshoreman, you know, countless people. San Pedro is very small. Even though we're part of Los Angeles, we're close to Long Beach and Compton. I lived my life in Compton, Long Beach, West LA, everywhere kind of sprinkled. But most of that time, education, living wise, was in San Pedro. Pedro's a small city. And I remember when Dr. Bryant first came to prominence, there were a number of people who I tapped in with who knew I knew her from other reasons and prior before knowing of her name, full disclosure. And no one really has said anything. We've all kind of just been quiet because the city is small, just like everywhere else in LA. But my issues with Cheyenne have nothing to do with personal, anything to do with that. They're strictly professional. And what I mean by that is the first topic of this, the issue that we have from a standpoint of influencer culture. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Cheyenne Bryant is, she rose to prominence over the past 3 to 4 years, primarily serving in the capacity, at least on these platforms, as a psychological expert. I won't do finger quotes, even though they're needed. She's been operating as a quote unquote doctor, and she's just been labeled as a specialist. The issue is she wasn't labeled as a specialist by other people. She was labeled as a specialist by herself. Let me give you a little bit of groundwork here. The first time I heard her referenced or saw her on a podcast, I immediately recognized her because, again, small city. I'd also recalled an associate of a distant associate of mine who I used to, get a lot of cool background info from, cool access to shows. The distant associate is a gentleman by the name of Corey Holcomb. Now, Corey is very lewd. It's the most respectful way to put it. Corey won't see this. Corey is very lewd. Now, there's somebody in Corey's circle who I still associate with, dope people. They'll see this, and he's not going to remember me, but that person knows me regardless. Corey is very lewd. Corey is very brash. But a lot of times, Corey isn't wrong. And I remember seeing Miss Bryant rise to prominence and get platformed, and just the influence was growing. She's on the Breakfast Club and she's on Cam Newton, and it's going and it's building and it's building. And I remember Corey years ago, he didn't use her by name, but he just said, there's a lady y'all are out here calling doctor who's not really a doctor. No one can validate her credentials, but it's very dangerous what y'all are doing. Now, people sometimes don't take Corey seriously because, he's Corey. The other thing is because he's brash, because he's lewd, because he's very upfront. Also, sprinkle lewd, but him being a comedian in there, people don't necessarily take him seriously, even though comedy at times, these comedians are in a space where their jokes give us an ounce of truth and reality. They just mask it behind laughter and punchlines. So over 2 years ago, when Corey said, this person's not a doctor, y'all got to be careful because this is dangerous, we didn't really pay attention. Well, when I say we, I'm excluding myself and a number of other people because we recognized what the problem was. But there were people who overlooked it. And I think there are two elephants in the room when it comes to Dr. Bryant. The first, and women in my family will see this, that woman is fine. That woman, I've seen her in person. I've met her. No, that woman is fine. It's yes, we know. The eyes, the body, the all of it. We get it. That was one thing. Like, that's one elephant in the room. Like, let's be honest. This was an extremely attractive woman, and not just attractive for a particular group of men, a woman who's universally seen as attractive, whether you like them fat, slim, skinny, dark, white, brown, light, Asian, whatever. People collectively recognize, hey, she looked good, which introduces the influencer portion. You see, here was an attractive woman who no one necessarily verified her credentials, but what they saw was body, yada, 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 yada. And she spoke in a way where, for the layman, sounded smart. So here's a clip, or something that'll be clipped. Part of the danger of Cheyenne Bryant was that she sounded smart to people who had zero context or understanding of the topic she was discussing. She's no different from these people who jump online and show you how to improve your credit or buy a house or sell a course or how to be a trader or how to earn your leisure or how to get money or how to do it fast. These are all people who, to those who are ignorant of the topic, sound brilliant. Cheyenne Bryant had the perfect combo. She knew a couple of words, she could toss them together, and she looked good. She was the perfect influencer. Now you add into the fact that she gets immediately platformed, not off of her credentials or her past work or proof of a dissertation, but because she was speaking in a way that was palatable for a certain audience. I want you to pause this video and go back and look at her interviews on the Breakfast Club, Cam Newton, the table people or the night conversation people. I want you to pay attention to the audience in which she's speaking to. Listen to what she's saying. It is specific for that audience, which, to call it what it is, the people who introduced her or platformed her understand statistically no one consumes more social media demographically than Black women. So why not platform a Black woman who's almost catering and pandering to Black women? Now, that's the second elephant in the room. You see, a non-credentialed, attractive woman to males and females came out speaking in a manner that assisted a particular demographic, and not the full demographic, but a certain subsection of Black women were very excited to hear this woman speak. In all reality, the rise of the red pill movement somewhat comes into play here. You have your Fresh and Fits, you have your Aided Tables, you have all of these people who create this content online speaking to a subsection of men across the board. The most prominent of those in the last 5 to 10 years wasn't a Rolla to Tomasi or a Joe Rogan or any of those people. Overnight, it became Kevin Samuels, a dude who'd wallowed in the YouTube gutters for years, trying to tell men how to improve, how to dress, how to get their money up and work. And then he went viral overnight, telling a woman about her worth. What does he have to do with this? Everything. You see, after Kevin Samuels rose to prominence and all these other dudes came on and these new content creators, women were looking for a hero, someone who could do the same. And they found that in Cheyenne Bryant, a woman who could go on Cam Newton's podcast and tell him, a man who had been a husband, but was divorced and has an array of children from an array of different women, a man who outright said on his podcast recently, the current woman he's with, if she desired marriage, he didn't know if he could deliver it to her. Women were looking for someone to check Cam Newton. They were looking for someone who could tell a DJ Envy or a Charlemagne the God that they were incorrect in their approaches to marriage. They were looking for someone who could check men and put men in their place. And they found it in Cheyenne Bryant. Now, it's not a bad thing that they found it. No different from it wasn't a bad thing that dudes found Kevin Samuels. The bad part was she wasn't operating as a life coach or a lifestyle coach or a person who was just online trolling. No. She was operating under the guise of a clinician, somebody who had booked hours as a therapist, somebody who had been monitored by other professionals, somebody who had completed a dissertation that was challenged by those who didn't necessarily oversee her, but had a level of compliance and processes in place to review to see if she could be certified to operate under the title of doctor. All of that went out the window. One, for dudes, because she was pretty. Two, for women, because she was a Black woman. So that's where the credibility issue comes in important spaces. Give you a little background. My introduction to mental health, now as an advocate and peer support person, all of that, I'm a champion for mental health, but I was not always that. My intro was probably like most young Black dudes. Probably had a teacher. Like I'm 40 years old, born and raised in Los Angeles. LA Unified School District, statistically, go back and check the numbers. Us, New York, Chicago, areas with large, vast groups of African Americans, regardless of what box they checked, whether they were Caribbean, West African, etc. Large groups of African American males who ended up being put in the school to prison pipeline were assessed, not just assessed, diagnosed, if you will, between the second and fifth grade as being problematic, aggressive, not being able to play well or nice with others, not sitting down for long periods of time. These are all of the things that now get labeled as ADHD, or back then ADD. But along with that, that problematic label, that scarlet letter, if you will, you were tagged or diagnosed with the ADD, the ADHD problem. But No point were these people professionals. No, no, no. Realistically, you were like me. You had some 40 something year old white lady from the suburbs who drove into your intercity school, who put on a cape to want to be a hero, who went to college wanting to make change, wanting to make things better. But when faced with altercation, when faced with a real issue, when faced with the reality of the job, absolutely and immediately folded. Countless young black men diagnosed, put in special education, put in remedial classes, given extra attention. These were your IEPs before your IEPs. And again, this will be a clip because it's all it is. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing really changed. We just had a group of young white women who initially appeared to be altruistic with their thoughts and their motives. Their motives didn't matter when their sentiments and actions and reality faced them. These altruistic, wanting to save the world type women in their late 30s, early 40s were put before these inner city youths and realized, I'm operating on my fears. School to prison pipeline for this one. This one needs special attention. This one need extra. Again, these were the IEPs before the IEPs. Think about that now. How many young black men are currently in IEPs getting extra attention, getting adjusted hours? Do they actually have learning issues, or are we still diagnosing with teachers? See, this is with Cheyenne Bryant. For the past 4 to 5 years, no one cared about her credentials. No one bothered to ask. She was platformed at diagnosing and pointing out and having people assess their lives. She was telling people about marriages. It married. Now, I'm not saying that person couldn't give advice, but then again, most people who are doing it aren't doing it from the space or the guise of being a professional. This is the credibility issue. The black mental health community. This is the credibility issue. The black medical field. This is the credibility issue in every important black space. So we're tied too much in with influence. Some baddie with honorary doctorates pulled up. And all of these men thought, man, I got a shot at her. And all of the women thought, this is who we've been waiting for. And a small subsection of men, I'm not going to necessarily say the hoteps, even though they be right a lot of times, but a small subsection of men said something about this doesn't seem right. The same small subsection of men were the ones who, there was the dreadlocked counselor from 2 to 3 years ago who was violating HIPAA. And these dudes said, now something about this is off. Just doesn't sit right. The way that she's speaking, the way that she's a professional, licensed in this field, but the way that she talks about black men. When there was a more prominent female, black, clinical, licensed doctor of psychology who had the same talking points. A woman who had a burner account referring to black men as bullet bags. Some didn't sit right with a certain subsection of black men. And it was overlooked until people started looking deeper. Then black women came on board, and those two sisters outed licenses pulled from their respective states because they needed to be. Because with all of your altruistic, want to save the world talk, you can't say, I want to save the world, but not that group. I want to help everybody, but not them. I think everyone can be changed, but not them over there. We have a credibility issue in some of our most important spaces. Cheyenne Bryant isn't new. She isn't even unique. I just gave you 2 other examples. But it's broad. It's bigger than mental health. Our obsession with influencers, our obsession with flash. I got about 3, 4 close homeboys of mine who work for BOP, Federal Bureau of Prisons. And they all joke in the group text about PPP loans. Now, for some of you, you knew that was like pay protection. They don't call it that. They call it prison, penitentiary, police, pipeline, all sorts of other things. But they joke because they said we have so many people who are locked up who took those loans. Some of those people who are locked up who took those loans had thousands of followers on social media, some millions, all off of fraud. But why do we platform them? What made us go, let's make them famous? So again, Cheyenne Bryant isn't new. She isn't even unique. She's a bigger part of the system. There's a critical infrastructure needed in the Black community when it comes to mental health, when it comes to medical, when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to our political thoughts. But we don't go that far because influencer culture is so powerful, so strong. This is the authority of influencer culture. We took a woman with no doctorates, with no education, and allowed her to sit into spaces and speak directly to Black men and Black women exclusively and tell them how their relationship should work, what they were seeing, how they should navigate and operate in their lives. This is the power of influencer culture. We took exposure and turned it into expertise. We rewarded confidence over competence. We see it every single day where we continue to elevate the people who speak the loudest, with the biggest brands, with the most followers, over those who speak accurately. But we ask the question, why do our mental health systems fail? Why do we have hospitals closing? Why are our political systems so weak? We really are searching for authenticity, something real, something helpful, but somewhere along the lines, right before we get across the finish, we settle for the flash. The pro wrestling announcer, Jim Ross, used to have an amazing line where he would talk about wrestlers. He said, "Boys, all sizzle and no steak." The flash, the grandiose nature, people who come and they market themselves as experts, doctors, specialists, with no proof of concept. See, at the end of the day, Cheyenne Bryant, she's not the cause of this crisis of Black people leaning into influencer culture or us not really seeking people with actual credibility. No, she's just a symptom of it. She represents everything of what happens when underserved communities and their institutions fail. Stigmas persist amongst Black men and checking out for therapy, going to seek counseling, going to get the healing they need. And that stigma persists partially because of situations like this. One of the scariest outcomes of this whole Cheyenne Bryant mess is similar to those of a Him 500, a Wall Street trapper, a big business. People who we wanted it quick, people who we needed a fast answer. And now, here's this person who was a fraud, who was a grifter. Now you got to go out here and explain to Black men who are hurting, who are seeking healing, hey man, there's help out there for you. And so many of us will immediately point to, look at who you all are letting in. I know real, authentic, thorough CPAs, tax preparers, tax law experts. And they tell you, hard for me to get business because they only got 300 followers. Now their pockets show otherwise. But they say, man, it's hard to get some of these clients because the grifters have been given the platform. This is our fault. We've created this push for likes, dopamine hits, pushing the exposure and making them experts because of follower counts, because people look good, because they present in a certain way that tells us this has to be real. Because how else would they get on this platform with so many followers? Why would they platform this person if they weren't real? Why would they do this if this person wasn't authentic? That wasn't a real deal. If this wasn't what it actually was, if this wasn't 100, why else would this person be up there? We've created this problem. And to fix it, we've got to fix it. We have to get in a space where we decide we want to actually train Black clinicians, a lot of Black males. We want to look into people's backgrounds because your background matters. We want to see dissertations. We want to push people into the space who know what they're talking about, even if they've only got 800 followers. We want people with proof of concept, specifically when it comes to Black male mental health. We want to platform people who make us feel comfortable in expressing our vulnerabilities. We want to just stop letting people in and start challenging the idea that visibility does not equal expertise, but accountability trumps both of those. Until then, we'll keep getting the rinse and repeat that we see in our community. The rise of some influencer, someone who we all like, someone who no one has vetted, and will allow them to be the authority in the space until it comes crashing down. And then I'm doing another one of these episodes. Not saying I told you so, but kind of saying I told you so. Appreciate y'all for listening. Way more than a minute of your time. It's Mantalk Monday podcast with Augusta C. Foster. Peace.